Hi everyone, my name is Kelsey Romney. I'm an assistant professor at Utah State University, specializing in career readiness within Extension Youth programs. I'm excited to be starting our new video series today with 4-H interviews with pros. Feel free to comment below of where you're tuning in from, and feel free to ask any questions and we'll try to answer them at the conclusion of the interview. To get started, I'd like to introduce today's professional, Dr. Carrie Rood. He's an associate professor at Utah State University. He's a doctor of veterinary medicine, and he has a master's of public health, a master's degree in parasitology, and a bachelor's degree in bioveterinary sciences. He has vast experience in both an academic and as a veterinarian, and he was instrumental in developing Utah State University's School of Veterinary Medicine. Interviewing Dr. Rood today, we have 4-H Southern Region Ambassador and Livestock Team Project Leader, Levi Reber of Sanpete County. Thank you both for joining us today, and Levi, I'm going to turn the time over to you.
All right, let's get started. First off, I'd like to thank Dr. Rood for sacrificing his time for us. So can I get started with these questions?
You bet, Levi. It's a pleasure for me to be here and talking. Although I have to admit, I'm not a big Facebook Live person. I've seen some people do it, but I've personally never participated in it. So you're going to have to walk me through this whole Facebook Live thing.
Well, it's the first time for me too, so we'll see how it goes. So first question is, tell us a little bit about what you do as a veterinarian.
I think when people think of veterinarians, they think of veterinarians who work on animals, and indeed that's what I do. And I'm certainly licensed and do practice with animals. People always ask me what my favorite animal is, and I've got a number of favorites, but I actually really like equine medicine, and I grew up on a dairy farm, so I like dairy production medicine, but I also do work on small animals as well. But outside of the clinical experience or clinical practice of veterinary medicine, I also work and have a specialty in the field of preventative veterinary medicine or public health. And so I actually do a lot of policy and research as it relates to public health and the interaction between diseases maybe animals get and those that humans get. And we call those zoonotic diseases.
Wow, interesting. So next question. What makes you excited about your job?
I think my current job, what makes me excited is the diversity that I find in terms of everyday activity. So when I was in clinical practice full time, you never knew what was going to walk through the door, zebra to, small cat. And then now, while I'm more in academic, in the academic realm, what really excites me and gets me going is the students and the energy that students bring. We have some really bright students, and I've got a lot of faith and hope in this future generation. And it's amazing that the energy that they can bring to me, and the technology like this Facebook Live thing, the technology that's there for this new generation of learners. I'll tell you a little experience, Levi. As you know, COVID sort of hit this last year, and right in the middle of the semester, and within short 8 days, we had all of our coursework online, and we were able to do some remote teaching and instruction and learning by students. And while that face-to-face, hands-on, I think it'll never go away. I think what's happened is we have a generation of your peers that really take to this technology and this learning, remote learning, really well. So that I think just the students bringing the energy is what I like about my job every day.
Nice. Thinking back just a few years ago, do you notice any interests you had as a kid that aligned you with your current career?
Well, that's a great question, Levi. I think the story that I've sort of settled on, and it's been a long time since I was your age, and so my memory's a little bit faded. But my mother and father always encouraged us to learn, to be active learners, and to get our education. And they always said sort of there was a place on the farm for us children, but we sort of had to go off and get our own degrees and then bring back some sort of a niche, right? Some sort of something that could add value to the operation. And so I had a brother, became an accountant, and that sure added value to our operation. And another brother that became a nurse, and that we were always getting hurt, so that always brought back value. And so being from a livestock operation, I went out and became a veterinarian. And so I think that was probably my early experience, wanting to know and understand that being a veterinarian is what I wanted to do. And then I think that and this sounds a little bit hokey, Levi, but sometimes there's something that just fits and feels right. And for me, this fit and it feels right. And so that's kind of how I knew I was going to be a veterinarian.
Yeah, I believe that. What type of education and training prepared you for this career?
Well, I think animal experience is really important, and experience with veterinarians really important as well. But ultimately, what gets you sort of looked at through an initial first cut on interviews or any application is your grade point average and your performance in school. And so that's where the performance in school is really important. It takes about 8 years to be, at least 8 years to become a veterinarian. And so that of college, in a professional school. And so that's a long time. That's a long time. And some students say, I want to get done sooner. But I'll tell you, when I think back 8 years ago, what was I doing? And you'll have that same experience, Levi, and you'll be like, I would have, should have, could have. 8 years, well, it seems like forever. It actually goes by fairly quickly.
Yeah. Now to the job. What is the average pay for a person in your field, a veterinarian?
There's actually some really good statistics out that the Veterinary Medical Association publishes and talks about average starting salaries, and then average mid-professional salaries, and then certainly later. And it all depends on what type of practice you go into, and it also depends on ownership. So if you become a small business owner, in other words, own your practice, there's a different accounting, or there's a different value there. But I think that right now the starting salary for a graduating veterinarian is right in that mid $70,000 range. And then it goes up from there depending on what type of practice and how many years in practice you are, et cetera.
Sweet. What type of skills are necessary for succeeding in your career?
Believe it or not, people skills are the number one thing that you've got to have. You've obviously have to have professional skills, right? So who wants a veterinarian that do surgery on their animal who's shaking all the time and can't do a suture pattern and do the appropriate knots? But I think that the biggest thing is to be able to communicate with people and to be able to be with people. And I think that's really important. And the example I give here is that I've actually never had an animal pay me. It's always been an owner associated with that animal. And so to be able to be compensated, you have to be able to communicate a treatment plan and what's wrong and a path forward, et cetera.
What are some of the biggest challenges you face in your job?
I think in my job, in my profession is where I think we could really talk. I think our veterinary medical profession has gone through some major transition. It was when I was out of school just a short period of time, the profession then flipped majority female versus majority of male, and majority of female brings some great attributes to the profession, but also brings some unique challenges. As an association or as a profession, they're less reluctant to own practices, the female veterinarians, et cetera. And I don't want you to start throwing anything at me here, Levi, but I think the facts are there that just sort of bear that out. And so that's one of the challenges that our profession is going through, how to sort of, how do we deal with this major transition that took place here a few years ago. I think the second thing is diversity and inclusion. I think our profession, like all professions, are struggling with how to be inclusive and how to have diversity and those types of things. So those are some of the big things. Third one I wanted to talk about, I think there still remains a pay disparity between the earnings of female veterinarians and the earning of male veterinarians. And so like other professions, we struggle with that as well. And so those are probably the three big things right now that we have to look at. A fourth one, if you want a fourth one, Levi, is student debt. It costs a lot of money to do any professional program, and particularly a veterinary program. Regrettably, we don't get paid quite as much as like a veterinary surgeon versus a human surgeon. And so our ability to retire that debt is a little bit more limited. And so that is a big portion or a big issue in our profession right now.
Thank you. So I know you love animals, so I know there's probably quite a bit of these. So what's the most valuable reward you've reaped for this job?
I think it's being able to help initially animals. Now it's helping students realize their dream and goals. So initially it was helping animals and providing that strengthening that bond with animals and their family and helping shepherd that along. And now it's really helping students realize their dream.
What advice do you give? Like, I know you're a professor and you have a lot of kids come through your classroom. So what advice would you give them considering that career?
Well, probably, I think we have a lot of people that want to be veterinarians. And then when they sort of get in the workload, it's like you and swimmers. There's a lot of people that determine that it takes a lot of hard work and maybe that they can devote their time and energy to something else. And so I think the big thing is that what gets you to the end of the race, if you will, for a veterinary profession and then ultimately become successful is sort of what I call stick-to-itiveness. In other words, just stick to it. Just sort of, you got to get in the grind and you just have to grind it out. And that's going through all the, the what I call the ology courses, the biology, the chemistries, the physiology, et cetera. You just have to get in and just do those science courses. And for some of us, and it's completely normal to not be brilliant in those or really good in those, right? I mean, and so you have to really work hard. So I think that's probably the biggest advice is that once you sort of settle on sort of a career or a choice or whatever you want to do, whether it's being a veterinarian or whatever, is just sort of sticking with it and grinding through it until you get to the end. So I think that's probably the biggest skill that somebody could have.
Okay, thank you. And that was my last question. So thank you for your time, Dr. Rood. And
well, thank you, Levi.
Yeah. And I'd like to turn the time back over to Kelsey.
Okay, thank you guys so much. We did have one question that came through just on a private chat. And for Dr. Rood, we're wondering, how do veterinarians keep their compassion throughout the day when a lot of times they're facing a lot of challenges with animals? Does that make sense?
It does. Compassion fatigue is one of the issues that we have in our profession. Like any medical profession, we have compassion fatigue as well. So there will be some days where everything goes wrong and you end up ultimately relieving the pain and suffering of animals. So in other words, putting down a lot of animals, and those can be very emotional. And so you find yourself being fatigued, if you will. But I mean, there are some techniques that you learn and that you can practice that help you overcome that compassion fatigue. For me, believe it or not, Levi and Kelsey, I wrote short stories. So I got a number of short stories that talk about that that help me cope with that. Probably they'll never see the light of day, but actually one of the stories was published in the prestigious Millicoma Ripples, which is my old hometown's community newspaper with a subscription base of maybe 100 people. I mean, it is like big time. So I think that's finding something outside of the profession helps with compassion fatigue.
Dr. Rood, do you mind talking to us a little bit about the programs that Utah State offers with veterinary medicine?
Oh, I'm excited about that. Yeah. So right now we have a partnership with a number of universities here in the western part of the country, with Idaho, with Washington, with Montana, where we have a regional program. So in essence, 2 years of the professional program are at Utah State University. If you come through the Utah entry, you can also enter through Montana, enter through Idaho, and enter through Washington. So first 2 years are at Utah State University in the beautiful Cache Valley, Logan. And then the last 2 years are up in Pullman, Washington at Washington State University. So we're excited about that program that we have and the opportunity that it has for students. So there are 20 Utah State students, so Utah resident students that are admitted each year. And there are 10 out-of-state students that are admitted each year as well. So the class size is 30, which is perfect. So I know Levi from Sanpete County is used to small class size, but it's always good to have small class size.
Okay, excellent. Okay, I think that's all we've got for you question-wise. We can wrap this up. I really appreciate your time, both of you. And I just want to thank everybody who is watching on Facebook Live and who will watch this video again later. And also, please join us again next month. We're interviewing a registered nurse, Ricky Jennings from Zebra Technologies, on October 15th. And we'd also like your feedback about this video. So whether you're watching it live with us now or you're watching it later as a recording, if you could click the link in the comments and fill out the questions, it'll take you maybe 1 or 2 minutes. It's really short. And we can enter you in a drawing to win a sports action camera. They look a lot like a GoPro. So if you could fill that out, we would really appreciate it. And we hope to see you in the next video. And thank you, Levi, and thank you, Dr. Rood. We really appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.